Stop right where you are, child of God. I need you to pause whatever you're doing and listen to what I'm about to tell you, because what you're about to discover in the next few minutes will change everything you thought you knew about love itself. Have you ever felt like you're constantly searching for something you can't quite name? Like there's this deep ache in your soul that nothing seems to fill? You've tried relationships, success, achievements, maybe even religious activities, but that emptiness remains. Well, what if I told you that what you're searching for has been searching for you your entire life? My name is here to walk with you through one of the most profound truths in existence, and I've spent years studying the deepest mysteries of divine love. What I'm about to share with you isn't just theology or nice religious sentiment. This is the very foundation of reality itself, the bedrock truth that holds the universe together. And here's what's incredible about this moment. You didn't accidentally stumble upon this video. You weren't randomly scrolling when this appeared on your screen. Something much deeper is happening here. The same love I'm about to reveal to you is the very force that brought you to this exact moment, to hear these exact words at precisely the time when your heart needs them most. But before we dive into the depths of this unfailing love, I need to warn you about something. What you're about to discover will ruin you for shallow substitutes forever. Once you truly grasp the magnitude of what I'm about to show you, you'll never be satisfied with counterfeit versions of love again. You'll see through every empty promise the world makes about finding fulfillment elsewhere. So if you're ready to have your understanding completely transformed, if you're prepared to discover a love so vast it makes the ocean look like a puddle, then stay with me. Because by the end of this journey together, you'll understand why millions of people throughout history have staked their entire lives on this one reality. Let me paint you a picture that will help you understand what we're dealing with here. Imagine you've been living your entire life in a small, windowless room. You think this room is the whole world. You've arranged your furniture, decorated your walls, tried to make it as comfortable as possible. But deep down, you sense there's something more. Sometimes you hear sounds from beyond the walls that make your heart race with possibility. Then one day, someone opens a door you never knew existed. Suddenly, you realize your little room was actually inside a magnificent palace. All this time, you had access to gardens that stretch beyond the horizon, libraries filled with infinite wisdom, banquet halls overflowing with abundance. The room wasn't your prison, it was just the starting point. That's exactly what's happening right now. Your understanding of love up to this point, no matter how beautiful or meaningful it's been, is like that small room, and I'm about to open the door to show you the palace. But here's where most people make a critical mistake. They hear about this unfailing love and immediately think, oh, I already know about God's love. I learned about that in Sunday school. And they miss the entire point. Because what I'm talking about isn't the watered-down, generic version of divine love that gets thrown around in religious circles. This is something so much more radical, so much more personal, so much more life-altering that it will leave you breathless. You see, the love I'm about to reveal to you isn't just an attribute of God, like He has love among other qualities. No, this love is the very essence of who He is. It's not that God has love, it's that God is love itself, and that changes everything about how we understand reality. Think about the most powerful force you can imagine. Maybe it's the energy that holds atoms together, or the gravitational pull that keeps planets in orbit. Now multiply that by infinity, and you're starting to approach the power of this unfailing love. It's the creative force that spoke galaxies into existence. It's the sustaining power that keeps your heart beating right now as you listen to these words. But here's what will absolutely blow your mind. This cosmic, universe-creating, all-powerful love isn't some distant, impersonal force. It knows your name. It knows the number of hairs on your head. It knows every thought you've ever had, every tear you've ever cried, every moment you've felt alone in the darkness. And it doesn't just know these things about you, it cares about them with an intensity that would overwhelm you if you could fully comprehend it. I know what some of you are thinking right now. If God really loves me that much, why has my life been so difficult? Why have I experienced so much pain, so much disappointment, so much rejection? And I want you to hold on to that question because we're going to address it head on. But first, you need to understand something crucial about the nature of true love. Real love, unfailing love, isn't the same as making everything easy. In fact, sometimes the deepest expression of love involves allowing difficulty for the sake of something greater. A surgeon's love for a patient doesn't prevent him from making an incision. A parent's love for a child doesn't mean never allowing them to face challenges. And God's unfailing love for you doesn't mean your life will be free from struggle. But here's the difference, and this is where it gets beautiful. Every surgeon's cut is for healing, every parent's discipline is for growth, and every difficulty you face is held within the context of a love so complete, so perfect, so unfailing, that it will work everything together for your ultimate good. Now I need to tell you something that might surprise you. The very fact that you're questioning God's love, the very fact that you sometimes doubt whether He really cares about you, is actually evidence of how deeply this love has already touched your life. You see, you can only be disappointed by love if you were created for love in the first place. A rock doesn't get disappointed when no one pays attention to it. A tree doesn't feel rejected when people walk past without noticing, but you do. You feel the ache of loneliness, the pain of rejection, the hunger for acceptance because you were specifically designed to be loved. Your capacity for disappointment is actually your capacity for love turned inside out. This is why nothing else satisfies. This is why you can achieve everything the world says should make you happy and still feel empty inside. You weren't created for the temporary, changeable, conditional love that humans offer. You were created for the eternal, unchanging, unconditional love that flows from the heart of God Himself. And here's something that will change how you see every relationship in your life. Every human love you've ever experienced, no matter how beautiful, is just an echo of this original love. Every parent's affection, every friend's loyalty, every romantic connection that's ever made your heart soar, they're all pointing to something greater. They're like shadows cast by a reality so bright and wonderful that the shadows alone can move us to tears. But what happens when we mistake the shadow for the reality? What happens when we expect human love to do what only divine love can do? We end up disappointed, hurt, and convinced that love itself is unreliable. We start building walls to protect ourselves. We develop strategies to earn love, to manipulate love, to guarantee love. And in doing so, we miss the one love that was never meant to be earned, manipulated, or guaranteed because it was already freely given before we even knew we needed it. This unfailing love I'm talking about didn't wait for you to get your life together before it reached out to you. It didn't wait for you to prove yourself worthy. It didn't even wait for you to acknowledge its existence. While you were still figuring out who you were, while you were still making mistakes, while you were still running in the wrong direction, this love was already pursuing you. And that word, pursuing, is crucial. This isn't a passive love that sits back and waits for you to find it. This is an active, relentless, never-giving-up love that will move heaven and earth to reach you. It's the love of a shepherd who leaves 99 sheep to find the one that's lost. It's the love of a father who runs down the road to embrace a son who wasted his inheritance. It's the love of a groom who gives up everything to win his bride. Right now, as you're listening to these words, that love is closer to you than your own breath. It's not something you have to travel to find. It's not something you have to earn through good behavior. It's not something you have to wait for until you're spiritually mature enough to handle it. It's here now, surrounding you, calling your name, inviting you to step into a reality that will make every other experience of love pale in comparison. But I want to be completely honest with you about something. Accepting this love, really receiving it deep in your soul, is simultaneously the easiest and the hardest thing you'll ever do. It's the easiest because it requires nothing from you except willingness. You don't have to clean up your act first. You don't have to understand all the theological implications. You don't have to have your questions answered or your doubts resolved. But it's also the hardest because it requires you to let go of control. It means admitting that you can't earn love, you can't manufacture love, you can't guarantee love through your performance. It means accepting that you are loved, not because of what you've done, but because of who you are. And for those of us who have spent our lives trying to prove our worth, that can feel terrifying. Here's what I want you to understand as we continue this journey together. The love we're exploring isn't just a nice feeling or a comforting thought. This love has power. It has the power to heal wounds that have festered for decades. It has the power to break chains of addiction, depression, and despair that have held you captive. It has the power to transform your identity from the inside out. This love doesn't just accept you as you are, though it absolutely does that. This love also refuses to leave you as you are. It's a transforming love, a love that calls forth the person you were always meant to be. It sees past your failures to your potential. It sees past your brokenness to your beauty. It sees past your present circumstances to your eternal destiny. But here's the beautiful paradox. The transformation doesn't happen because you're trying to earn more love. The transformation happens because you're finally experiencing the love that was already there. It's like a flower that's been kept in darkness suddenly being placed in sunlight. The sunlight doesn't have to convince the flower to bloom. The very nature of the flower responds to the light it was created for. And that's exactly what happens when this unfailing love begins to penetrate the darkness in your life. You don't have to force yourself to change. You don't have to try harder to be better. The love itself becomes the catalyst for transformation. You find yourself naturally becoming more loving, more peaceful, more joyful, not because you're working at it, but because you're finally connected to the source of these qualities. Now, I know some of you are thinking, this sounds too good to be true. If this love is really unfailing, if it's really as powerful and personal as you're describing, then why don't more people experience it? Why do so many people, even religious people, seem to struggle with feeling unloved and unworthy? And that's exactly what we're going to explore in the next part of our journey together, because the truth is, this unfailing love is available to everyone, but not everyone knows how to receive it. There are barriers that keep us from experiencing what's already ours. There are lies we've believed about ourselves and about God that act like walls around our hearts. But here's what I want you to know as we pause here. The very fact that you've stayed with me this far, the very fact that something in your spirit is responding to these words, is evidence that this love is already at work in your life. You may not feel it yet. You may not understand it yet. But it's there, patient and persistent, waiting for the moment when you're ready to let it in completely. In just a moment, we're going to dive deeper into how this love actually works in practical, everyday life. We're going to explore why it never fails, even when everything else does. We're going to look at the specific ways it wants to transform your relationships, your purpose, your entire way of seeing yourself and the world around you. But before we go there, I want you to do something. I want you to just sit quietly for a moment and consider the possibility that everything I've shared with you is true. Consider the possibility that there really is a love, this perfect, this powerful, this personal, and that it's been reaching for you your entire life. Don't worry about whether you feel it yet. Don't worry about whether you deserve it. Don't worry about what it might mean for how you've been living. Just consider the possibility. Because sometimes the first step toward experiencing unfailing love is simply being willing to believe that such a thing might actually exist. And if you're ready to discover how this love wants to revolutionize every aspect of your existence, then you won't want to miss what comes next. Because we're about to explore the most practical, life-changing dimensions of divine love that will leave you wondering how you ever lived without truly knowing this reality. The journey into unfailing love has only just begun, and the best is yet to come. What I'm about to show you next will challenge everything you thought you knew about receiving love. Because there's a secret that changes everything, and it's hidden in plain sight. You see, most people approach love like they're trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. They pour in affection, validation, achievements, relationships, but nothing seems to stay. The emptiness returns, the longing comes back, and they conclude that either love isn't real or they're somehow unworthy of it. But what if I told you the problem isn't the love? What if the issue isn't that there's not enough love available to you? What if the real problem is that you've been trying to receive infinite love through finite channels? Think about it this way. Imagine you're trying to download the entire internet through a dial-up connection from 1995. The information is all there, available and waiting. But your receiving mechanism is completely inadequate for what's being offered. You'd spend forever getting frustrated, thinking the internet doesn't work, when really you just need a better connection. That's exactly what happens when we try to receive God's unfailing love through our damaged understanding of what love is supposed to look like. We've been conditioned by broken relationships, conditional acceptance, and performance-based affection. So when perfect love tries to reach us, we literally don't know how to receive it. Here's what most people don't realize about unfailing love. It's not just that it won't fail you in the future. It's that it has never failed you, not even once, not even in your darkest moments when you were absolutely convinced that God had abandoned you. Let me explain what I mean, because this is where it gets revolutionary. Every time you felt rejected, this love was there, aching with you. Every time you felt alone, this love was surrounding you, even when you couldn't sense it. Every time you felt worthless, this love was declaring your infinite value, even when you couldn't hear it. The love didn't fail. Your ability to perceive it was compromised. And that's not your fault. That's just what happens when we live in a world that has taught us all the wrong things about how love works. But here's the incredible news. Once you understand how to align your receiving mechanism with the frequency of unfailing love, everything changes. It's like suddenly tuning into a radio station that's been broadcasting your favorite song the entire time. The song was always there, you just needed to find the right frequency. So how do you tune in? How do you align yourself to receive what's already being given? It starts with understanding 3 fundamental truths about how unfailing love operates. First truth, this love is not based on your performance. I know you've heard this before, but I need you to really let it sink in. This love didn't increase when you did something good yesterday. It won't decrease if you mess up tomorrow. It exists independent of your behavior because it's rooted in God's character, not yours. But here's what's profound about this. When you truly grasp that your performance doesn't affect how much you're loved, it actually frees you to perform better. Not to earn love, but from love. It's the difference between a slave working to avoid punishment and a child helping because they know they belong to the family. Second truth, this love sees what others miss. Human love, no matter how genuine, is limited by human perception. People love what they can see, understand, and relate to. But unfailing love sees the you that exists beyond your mistakes, beyond your current circumstances, beyond even your own self-understanding. This love sees the person you were created to be before the world told you who you had to become to survive. It sees your potential when everyone else sees your problems. It sees your beauty when you can only see your brokenness. and it loves that version of you with complete intensity, while simultaneously loving who you are right now, in this very moment. Third truth, this love is actively working for your good, even when it doesn't feel good. This might be the hardest truth to accept, but it's also the most liberating. Unfailing love doesn't promise to make your life easy. It promises to make your life meaningful. Sometimes this love will allow you to face difficulties that reveal your strength. Sometimes it will let you experience consequences that teach you wisdom. Sometimes it will permit pain that breaks open your heart so more love can get in. But every single circumstance, even the ones that feel like punishment, is being filtered through the hands of a love that would rather die than let you be truly harmed. And that's not just poetic language. That's exactly what happened. This love literally chose death rather than let you remain separated from it forever. The cross wasn't just a historical event. It was love making the ultimate statement about your worth. Now, I want to address something that might be stirring in your heart right now. Maybe you're thinking, this all sounds beautiful, but I've been hurt by people who claim to love me. I've been disappointed by religion. I've prayed and felt like no one was listening. How do I know this is different? And that question reveals something beautiful about you. It shows that despite all the disappointment, despite all the pain, there's still something in you that wants to believe love is real. That longing you feel, that's actually the love calling to you from the inside out. You see, God doesn't just love you from a distance. He's placed something of himself inside you that recognizes his voice when it speaks. That's why certain words, certain songs, certain moments can make you cry without you even understanding why. That's your spirit recognizing its source. But here's what happens when we've been hurt. We develop what I call love allergies. Just like someone who's been stung by a bee might become afraid of all buzzing insects, we can become afraid of all expressions of love because some expressions of love have hurt us. The tragedy is that we end up rejecting the very thing we need most. We build walls to protect ourselves from bad love, but those same walls keep out good love too. We become so afraid of being disappointed again that we choose loneliness over the risk of connection. But unfailing love has a way of healing love allergies. It's patient enough to work around your defenses. It's gentle enough not to trigger your fears. It's persistent enough to keep showing up even when you're not ready to let it in. This love knows that your resistance isn't rejection, it's protection. And instead of being offended by your caution, it honors the wisdom that taught you to be careful. It doesn't try to rush you or manipulate you into trusting. It simply continues to demonstrate its reliability until you feel safe enough to believe. Here's something that might surprise you. The very wounds that make you afraid to trust are the places where this love wants to do its deepest healing work. Those broken places in your heart aren't obstacles to love. They're invitations for love to prove its power. Think about it. Anyone can love someone who's never been hurt. Anyone can accept someone who's never made mistakes. Anyone can be patient with someone who's never tested their limits. But it takes unfailing love to enter into the messiest, most damaged parts of a person's life, and not just stay, but bring healing. That's exactly what this love wants to do with you. It doesn't want to love you despite your brokenness. It wants to love you through your brokenness into wholeness. It sees your scars not as disqualifications, but as opportunities to demonstrate that there's no wound too deep for its healing touch. And here's what's amazing. As this love begins to heal those wounded places, you start to discover that your pain actually gives you a capacity for compassion that you wouldn't have had otherwise. Your struggles become the very thing that equips you to help others who are struggling. Your story of healing becomes a beacon of hope for people who are still in the darkness you've walked through. This is how unfailing love works. It doesn't waste anything. It doesn't just restore what was broken. It transforms what was broken into something more beautiful than it would have been if it had never been broken at all. But I need to tell you something important about timing. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. Unfailing love is more like the sunrise than a lightning bolt. It comes gradually, steadily, consistently, until one day you realize that the darkness you've been living in has been completely replaced by light. Some of you have been waiting for a dramatic moment when everything suddenly makes sense and all your pain disappears. But that's not usually how this love works. Instead, it works like water on stone. Day by day, moment by moment, it shapes you with such gentleness that you hardly notice the change until you look back and realize you're not the same person you were before. This is why faith is so important in receiving unfailing love. Not faith, as in forcing yourself to believe things that don't make sense, but faith, as in continuing to open your heart to love even when you can't see the full picture yet. Faith as in trusting the process even when the process is uncomfortable. And here's what I want you to know about your faith. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be strong. It doesn't even have to be consistent. The smallest amount of genuine openness is enough for this love to begin its work in your life. Jesus once said that faith the size of a mustard seed could move mountains. Do you know how small a mustard seed is? It's tiny, barely visible, but it contains within itself everything necessary to become something much larger. Your willingness to consider that you might be loved unconditionally, your desire to believe that your life has meaning, your hope that things could be different than they are right now, that's your mustard seed of faith. And this unfailing love is ready to grow something beautiful from that tiny beginning. But here's where it gets practical. How do you actually live in this love on a daily basis? How do you let it change the way you see yourself, your relationships, your purpose? How do you move from understanding it intellectually to experiencing it relationally? This is what we're going to explore next, and it's going to change everything about how you approach each day. Because once you learn to live from this love instead of for this love, you'll discover a peace and joy that circumstances can't shake. The secret isn't just knowing you're loved. The secret is learning to love from the overflow of being loved. And that transformation is about to revolutionize every aspect of your existence in ways you never thought possible. The moment you begin to live from love instead of for love, something extraordinary happens. Your entire relationship with yourself shifts. Instead of constantly asking, "Am I lovable?" you start asking, "How can I love?" Instead of searching for evidence that you matter, you start looking for opportunities to demonstrate that others matter. This isn't just a nice philosophical shift. This is a complete rewiring of how your soul operates in the world, and it changes everything. Let me show you what I mean through a story that illustrates this perfectly. There was a woman who spent decades of her life trying to earn her father's approval. Every decision she made, every achievement she pursued, every relationship she entered was filtered through one question: will this finally make him proud of me? She became successful by every external measure. She had the career, the house, the recognition, but inside she was exhausted because no matter what she accomplished, it never felt like enough. There was always this nagging sense that she was one mistake away from losing whatever love she had managed to earn. Then something shifted. Not through therapy, not through self-help, not through trying harder. Through encountering this unfailing love we've been talking about. And here's what happened. She realized that she had been trying to get from her earthly father what only her heavenly Father could give. The moment she understood that she was already completely loved, already fully accepted, already perfectly known by the one whose opinion actually mattered, everything changed. She didn't stop caring about her earthly father, but she stopped needing his approval to know who she was. And here's the beautiful part. When she stopped desperately grasping for his love, she actually became more lovable. When she stopped performing for his acceptance, she became more authentic. When she stopped fearing his rejection, she became more confident. The very thing she had been trying so hard to earn naturally flowed when she stopped trying to earn it. This is the paradox of unfailing love. The more secure you become in receiving it, the more freely you can give it away. The more convinced you are of your own worth, the less you need others to validate it. The more filled you are with divine love, the less depleted you feel by human relationships. But here's where most people get stuck. They hear about this unfailing love and think, great, now I never have to deal with difficult people or painful circumstances again. But that's not how it works. In fact, sometimes understanding how deeply you're loved actually makes you more sensitive to the pain around you, not less. When you truly grasp how much you're worth to God, you start seeing how much everyone else is worth to Him too. When you understand the lengths He went to reach you, you start recognizing that He's going to the same lengths to reach the person who hurt you, the person who rejected you, the person who seems completely unlovable. This can be overwhelming at first, because unfailing love doesn't just change how you see yourself, it changes how you see everyone. That difficult coworker becomes someone God is pursuing. That family member who drives you crazy becomes someone Jesus died for. That stranger who cut you off in traffic becomes someone the Creator of the universe knows by name. And suddenly, you find yourself caring about people you never thought you could care about. You find yourself praying for people you used to just complain about. You find yourself looking for ways to show kindness to people who have shown you anything but kindness. This isn't because you're trying to be a better person. This is because the love that's healing you is the same love that wants to heal them. And when you're connected to that love, you become a conduit for it to reach others. Now, I need to be honest with you about something. This transformation doesn't happen without resistance. There's something in human nature that actually fights against receiving love this freely. We're so conditioned to believe that everything has a price, that nothing good comes without strings attached, that someone this powerful couldn't possibly care about someone as ordinary as us. Your mind will come up with 1,000 reasons why this can't be true. Your past will whisper that you're too damaged. Your present circumstances will suggest that if God really loved you, things would be different. Your fear will insist that if you really open your heart to this love, you'll just end up disappointed again. But here's what I want you to understand about that resistance. It's not evidence that this love isn't real. It's evidence of how desperately you need it. The stronger the resistance, the greater the potential for transformation. The louder the lies, the more powerful the truth becomes when you finally hear it. This is why so many people have dramatic encounters with unfailing love in their darkest moments. It's not that God loves desperate people more than content people. It's that desperate people are more likely to stop relying on their own strength long enough to receive what's being offered. Rock bottom becomes holy ground because it's where we finally stop pretending we have everything under control. It's where we finally become willing to consider that maybe, just maybe, we need a love that's bigger than our ability to earn it or understand it. But you don't have to wait for rock bottom. You don't have to lose everything to gain everything. You can choose right now, in whatever circumstances you're facing, to open your heart to this reality. You can decide today to stop trying to be worthy of love and start receiving the love that makes you worthy. Here's how this works practically. Every morning when you wake up, before you check your phone, before you start mentally rehearsing all the things you need to accomplish, take a moment to remember whose you are. Not what you need to do to earn love that day, but whose love you already carry with you into the day. Every time you look in the mirror, instead of cataloging your flaws, remind yourself that you're looking at someone God considers precious enough to die for. Every time you make a mistake, instead of spiraling into shame, remember that this love isn't surprised by your imperfection. It factored your failures into its decision to love you and chose you anyway. Every time someone treats you poorly, instead of internalizing their treatment as a reflection of your worth, remember that their inability to love you well doesn't change how well you're loved by the one who matters most. Every time you feel lonely, Instead of concluding that no one cares, remember that you're never actually alone, because this love is closer to you than your own heartbeat. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't self-help psychology. This is reality alignment. This is learning to see yourself and your circumstances through the lens of unfailing love, instead of through the lens of a world that has forgotten how to recognize true worth. And as you practice this, something remarkable begins to happen. The opinions of others start to carry less weight. The approval of people starts to feel less necessary. The fear of rejection starts to lose its power over your decisions, not because you stop caring about people, but because you stop needing them to be God for you. When you know you're unconditionally loved by the Creator of everything, the conditional love of creation stops defining you. When you're secure in the acceptance of the one who knows you completely, the rejection of those who only know you partially stops devastating you. This is freedom, real freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want without consequences, but the freedom to be who you really are without fear. The freedom to love without guarantees. The freedom to risk without being crushed by failure. The freedom to hope without being destroyed by disappointment. But here's something beautiful that happens as you grow in this freedom. You start attracting different kinds of relationships. People who are also learning to live from love instead of for love. People who see your worth without needing you to prove it. People who can receive love without feeling indebted to it. And the relationships you already have start changing too. When you stop needing people to fill a void that only God can fill, you can actually enjoy them for who they are, instead of resenting them for who they're not. When you stop making them responsible for your happiness, you can contribute to theirs. When you stop demanding that they love you perfectly, you can appreciate the imperfect ways they try to love you. This doesn't mean you accept abuse or settle for relationships that are harmful. In fact, the opposite is true. When you know how love is supposed to feel, you become less willing to accept counterfeits. When you understand your own worth, you naturally gravitate toward people who recognize it too. But you do this from a place of strength, not weakness. From a place of fullness, not emptiness. From a place of choice, not desperation. And that changes everything about the quality of connection you experience. Now, let me address something that might be stirring in your heart. Maybe you're thinking, this sounds incredible, but how do I know it's not just wishful thinking? How do I know I'm not just creating a fantasy to make myself feel better? And that's a fair question. In a world full of false promises and empty guarantees, healthy skepticism is actually wisdom. But here's how you can tell the difference between wishful thinking and spiritual reality. Wishful thinking makes you feel better temporarily, but doesn't change you fundamentally. Spiritual reality transforms you from the inside out in ways you couldn't manufacture on your own. When you encounter unfailing love, you don't just feel differently about yourself. You start behaving differently toward others. You don't just think more positive thoughts. You develop genuine compassion for people you used to judge. You don't just gain confidence. You develop humility that comes from knowing you're loved, not because you're better than anyone else, but because love itself is greater than all of us. This love produces what the Bible calls fruit. Patience when you used to be quick to anger. Kindness toward people who don't deserve it. Peace in circumstances that used to create anxiety. Joy that exists independent of your circumstances. Self-control in areas where you used to feel powerless. These aren't things you can fake or force. They're the natural result of being connected to the source of these qualities. It's like plugging a lamp into an electrical outlet. The lamp doesn't have to try to shine. It just has to maintain the connection to the power source. And here's what's amazing about this fruit. Other people notice it. They might not understand what's different about you, but they can sense something has changed. They're drawn to the peace you carry. They're comforted by the love you offer. They're inspired by the hope you demonstrate. You become a walking advertisement for the reality of unfailing love. Not because you're preaching at people, but because you're living from a place they recognize their own souls are hungry for. You become evidence that this love we've been talking about isn't just a beautiful concept, but a living reality that actually changes lives. But here's the thing about becoming that kind of evidence. It comes with responsibility. When people see the transformation in your life, they're going to want to know what happened. They're going to ask questions. They're going to look to you for guidance on how they can experience what you found. And this is where your journey with unfailing love becomes not just about your own healing, but about participating in the healing of others. This is where you discover that you weren't just saved from something, you were saved for something. You weren't just rescued for your own benefit, you were rescued to become part of the rescue mission for others. This might feel overwhelming. You might think, I'm still figuring this out myself. How can I help anyone else? But here's the beautiful truth. You don't have to have it all together to share what you've discovered. You don't have to be perfect to point others toward perfection. You just have to be honest about what this love has done in your life and let that testimony speak for itself. Some of the most powerful witnesses to unfailing love are people who are still in process, still growing, still learning. Because they can say, I don't have all the answers, but I know this love is real because it's changing me in ways I couldn't change myself. And as you begin to participate in loving others the way you've been loved, something extraordinary happens. Your own experience of being loved deepens. It's like a well that gets deeper the more you draw from it. The more you give away what you've received, the more you realize how much you've been given. This is the mystery of unfailing love. It multiplies when it's shared. It grows when it's given away. It becomes more real to you as you help it become real to others. But we're not quite ready to talk about how to share this love yet. Because first, there's something else you need to understand about how it works in the most challenging areas of your life. There are places where this love wants to reach that you might not even realize need healing. There are dreams it wants to resurrect that you might have given up on. There are purposes it wants to fulfill through you that you might not even know exist. What I'm about to share with you next will show you how this unfailing love doesn't just heal your past and secure your future, but completely transforms your understanding of why you're here and what your life is meant to accomplish. Because you weren't just created to be loved, you were created to love in ways that only you can love, to reach people that only you can reach, to fulfill purposes that only you can fulfill. The love that saved you is the same love that wants to use you, and when you understand how that works, everything about your existence takes on meaning you never imagined possible. The transformation I'm talking about isn't just about feeling better about yourself. It's about discovering that your entire existence has been orchestrated for a purpose so magnificent that it will take your breath away when you finally see it clearly. You see, most people go through life thinking they're just trying to survive, maybe succeed, hopefully find some happiness along the way. But what if I told you that survival was never the goal? What if success, as the world defines it, is actually a distraction from something infinitely more significant? What if happiness is just a byproduct of stepping into the role you were always meant to play? This unfailing love didn't just rescue you from something. It rescued you for something. And that something is so specific, so uniquely designed for who you are, that no one else in all of human history could fulfill it the way you can. Think about this for a moment. Out of all the billions of people who have ever lived, who are living now, and who will live in the future, there has never been and will never be another you. Your exact combination of experiences, personality, gifts, struggles, and perspective exists nowhere else in the universe. That's not an accident. That's intentional design. Every difficulty you've walked through has developed a strength in you that someone else desperately needs to witness. Every pain you've endured has created a capacity for compassion that can reach into places where others can't go. Every mistake you've made has taught you lessons that could spare someone else from the same destruction. But here's what's incredible about this purpose. It's not something you have to figure out through years of soul-searching or complicated self-discovery processes. It flows naturally from the love relationship we've been talking about. When you're truly connected to unfailing love, your purpose becomes as natural as breathing. You start noticing the people around you differently. That person struggling with depression becomes more than just someone having a hard time. They become someone whose darkness you understand, because you've walked through your own. That person making destructive choices becomes more than just someone being foolish. They become someone whose pain you recognize, because you felt your own. And something inside you starts reaching toward them. Not with judgment, not with superiority, not with a desire to fix them, but with the same love that reached towards you when you were in your darkest place. This is how purpose works in the kingdom of unfailing love. It's not about grand gestures or dramatic ministries, though those certainly have their place. It's about love recognizing itself in need and responding naturally the way water flows downhill. Maybe your purpose is to be the first person in your family to break generational patterns of dysfunction. Maybe it's to create beauty in a world that's forgotten how to see it. Maybe it's to build businesses that honor human dignity. Maybe it's to raise children who know their worth from day one. Maybe it's to love your spouse in a way that heals wounds from their past. Or maybe your purpose is something you've never even considered because it's so perfectly fitted to who you are that it doesn't feel like work when you're doing it. Maybe it's making people laugh when they've forgotten how to find joy. Maybe it's listening to people who have never felt truly heard. Maybe it's creating spaces where people feel safe to be vulnerable. The beautiful thing about divine purpose is that it doesn't require you to become someone you're not. It requires you to become more fully who you already are, underneath all the layers of protection and performance you've built up over the years. But here's where it gets challenging. Living out your purpose means you'll have to risk being misunderstood. It means you'll have to choose love even when love isn't returned. It means you'll have to keep believing in people even when they don't believe in themselves yet. This is where the unfailing nature of the love becomes absolutely crucial. Because when you're living on purpose, you're going to face resistance, not just from the world, but sometimes from the very people you're trying to love. People who are hurt often hurt others. People who are afraid often try to make others afraid too. If your sense of worth and calling depends on how people respond to your love, you'll quit the first time someone rejects what you're offering. If your motivation comes from seeing immediate results, you'll get discouraged when the transformation you're hoping for takes longer than you expected. But when you're rooted in unfailing love, you can keep loving even when love seems to be failing. You can keep believing even when belief seems foolish. You can keep hoping even when hope seems unrealistic, because you're not drawing your strength from the people you're serving. You're drawing it from the love that's serving through you. And here's something that will amaze you. The very act of loving others from this overflow begins to heal parts of your own heart you didn't even know were wounded. Every time you offer grace to someone else, you experience grace more deeply yourself. Every time you choose to see someone's potential instead of their problems, you start seeing your own potential more clearly. It's like God uses your love for others as a mirror to show you how He loves you. When you refuse to give up on someone who keeps making mistakes, you suddenly understand that He hasn't given up on you despite all your mistakes. When you choose to believe in someone's capacity to change, you realize He's been believing in your capacity to change all along. This is the mystery of living from unfailing love. The more you give it away, the more you understand what you've received. The more you love others unconditionally, the more convinced you become that you're loved unconditionally. But I want to address something that might be creating anxiety in your heart right now. Maybe you're thinking, this sounds like a lot of pressure. What if I mess up? What if I'm not good at loving people? What if I try to live out this purpose and I fail? And here's what I want you to understand. This love we're talking about doesn't depend on your performance any more than your salvation did. You don't have to love perfectly to participate in perfect love. You don't have to be wise to share wisdom. You don't have to be healed completely to help in the healing of others. In fact, some of the most powerful expressions of divine love come through people who are still limping from their own wounds. Some of the most compelling testimonies come from people who can say, "I don't have this all figured out, but I know this love is real because it's still working on me." Your imperfections don't disqualify you from purpose. They authenticate it. They prove that this love really does work through ordinary, broken, still-in-process people. They demonstrate that God doesn't wait for us to get our act together before He uses us to impact others. And here's something beautiful about the way divine purpose unfolds. It often starts small, in ways that don't seem significant at the time. A conversation with a neighbor, a moment of patience with a difficult person, a decision to forgive when forgiveness seems impossible. But unfailing love has a way of taking these small acts of faith and multiplying their impact in ways you never could have orchestrated on your own. That conversation with your neighbor might be exactly what they needed to hear to take the next step in their own healing journey. That moment of patience might be the first time someone experienced grace in months. That act of forgiveness might break a chain of bitterness that's been passed down for generations. You may never know in this lifetime the full extent of how your willingness to love has changed the trajectory of other people's lives. But that's not your concern. Your concern is simply to remain connected to the source of love and let it flow through you to whoever needs it most. Now, I need to tell you something about timing that's absolutely crucial to understand. This love has perfect timing, but it's not usually our timing. We want to see immediate results. We want to know that our love is making a difference right now. We want confirmation that we're on the right track before we take the next step. But unfailing love often works like a farmer planting seeds. The farmer doesn't plant a seed and then dig it up the next day to see if it's growing. He plants it, waters it, and trusts the process even when he can't see what's happening beneath the surface. Your acts of love are like seeds being planted in the soil of other people's hearts. Some will sprout quickly. Others will lie dormant for years before they finally break through. Some will grow in ways you never expected. Others will produce fruit that looks completely different from what you thought you were planting. But every seed planted in love will eventually produce something beautiful. That's the promise. That's the guarantee. Not that it will happen on your timeline or look like what you imagined, but that love never returns empty. It always accomplishes something significant, even when that something is invisible to you. This is why living from unfailing love requires such deep trust. You have to believe that your obedience to love matters even when you can't see the results. You have to keep showing up even when it feels like nothing is changing. You have to continue investing in people even when they don't seem to appreciate what you're offering. But here's what sustains you through those seasons of apparent fruitlessness. The same love that's working through you to reach others is also working in you to complete your own transformation. Every act of love changes you as much as it impacts the person receiving it. Every choice to forgive develops your own capacity for grace. Every decision to hope enlarges your own ability to believe. So even when you can't see the external results of your love, you can trust that internal results are always happening. You're becoming more like the one whose love flows through you. You're developing character that will serve you for eternity. You're building spiritual muscle that will enable you to carry even greater expressions of love in the future. And here's something that might surprise you about this journey. The more you learn to love like this, the more you realize how much you still have to learn about love. It's not like mastering a skill where you eventually reach a point of expertise. It's more like exploring an ocean, where every depth you reach reveals even greater depths beyond. This keeps you humble. It keeps you dependent. It keeps you amazed by the love that's working through you, instead of impressed with yourself for being such a loving person. Because the truth is, apart from this unfailing love, you wouldn't naturally love difficult people. Apart from this grace, you wouldn't naturally forgive those who have hurt you. Apart from this power, you wouldn't naturally have hope for people who seem hopeless. Every expression of divine love through your life is evidence of God's goodness, not your own. Every breakthrough in someone else's life through your influence is a testimony to His power, not your abilities. Every transformation that happens as a result of your faithfulness is proof of His unfailing nature, not your success as a person. This understanding protects you from both pride and despair. It protects you from pride because you know that any good flowing through you comes from Him. It protects you from despair because you know that the outcome doesn't ultimately depend on you. Your job is simply to remain connected to the vine so that His life can flow through you to others. Your responsibility is to stay close enough to the source of love that you never run dry when people draw from what you're offering. But how do you maintain that connection when life gets overwhelming? How do you keep your heart open to divine love when human love keeps disappointing you? How do you continue believing in people's potential when their present reality suggests otherwise? This is where we need to talk about the practices that keep you anchored in unfailing love, even when everything around you seems to be failing. Because living from love isn't just about having a powerful experience once. It's about creating rhythms and habits that keep you connected to that power every single day. The most transformed people aren't those who had the most dramatic encounter with God's love. They're the people who learned how to return to that love consistently, how to draw from that well daily, how to realign themselves with that truth whenever they drift away from it. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. The daily practices that turn a moment of revelation into a lifetime of transformation. The habits that ensure you never lose sight of how loved you are, no matter what circumstances you're facing. The rhythms that keep your heart soft and your spirit strong regardless of how others treat you. Because understanding unfailing love intellectually is just the beginning. Learning to live from it practically is where the real adventure begins. And that adventure is about to transform not just how you see yourself, but how you impact every person whose life intersects with yours. The practices I'm about to share with you have been tested by millions of people across thousands of years. They're not complicated, but they are powerful. They don't require perfection, but they do require consistency. They won't make your life easier, but they will make your life infinitely more meaningful. And when you learn to live this way, you'll discover that you've become part of something much bigger than yourself. You'll realize that your individual journey into unfailing love is actually part of a global movement of people who are learning to love like God loves. You'll see that your personal transformation is contributing to the transformation of the world. The love that reached down to rescue you is the same love that wants to reach through you to rescue others. The grace that healed your wounds is the same grace that wants to heal the wounds of your generation. The hope that restored your faith in life is the same hope that wants to restore faith in a world that's forgotten how to believe in goodness. This is bigger than your personal happiness, though it will make you happier than you ever thought possible. This is bigger than your individual success, though it will help you succeed in ways that truly matter. This is bigger than your private relationship with God, though it will deepen that relationship beyond anything you can imagine. This is about participating in the redemption of everything that's been broken by the absence of love. This is about becoming part of the solution to the loneliness, despair, and hopelessness that plague our world. This is about joining the ancient and eternal mission of making unfailing love visible, tangible, and available to everyone who desperately needs it. And that mission begins with the daily choice to return to the source of love when you wake up each morning, to draw from that wellspring when you encounter difficult people, and to trust that love when circumstances suggest that love has failed. The practices that make this possible are simpler than you think, but more powerful than you can imagine. And they're waiting for you to discover them in the next part of our journey together. The first practice that will anchor you in unfailing love is what I call the morning reset. Before you reach for your phone, before you start mentally rehearsing all the challenges waiting for you, you take 3 minutes to remember whose voice matters most in your life. Here's what most people don't realize about mornings. The first thoughts you think, the first emotions you feel, the first perspective you adopt sets the trajectory for your entire day. If you wake up immediately focused on your problems, your inadequacies, your fears, you're essentially tuning your heart to the frequency of scarcity and anxiety. But if you wake up and consciously connect with the love that never sleeps, never leaves, never changes based on your performance, you're tuning your heart to the frequency of abundance and peace. It's like choosing which radio station will provide the soundtrack for your day. The morning reset doesn't require perfect prayers or profound insights. It's as simple as lying in bed for 60 seconds and saying, "Good morning, God. Thank you that your love for me is the same today as it was yesterday. Help me see myself and others through your eyes today." Some mornings you'll feel it deeply. Other mornings you'll feel nothing at all. The feelings don't matter. What matters is that you're establishing a pattern of returning to truth before the lies of the day have a chance to take root in your thinking. But here's what happens when you practice this consistently. Over time, your default setting begins to shift. Instead of waking up anxious about what you need to accomplish to be worthy, you wake up secure in a worth that's already been established. Instead of immediately focusing on what's wrong with your life, you start from a place of gratitude for what's already right. This isn't positive thinking or self-help psychology. This is reality training. You're teaching your heart to recognize truth faster than it recognizes lies. You're developing spiritual reflexes that automatically turn toward love when circumstances try to convince you that love has disappeared. The second practice is what I call the mirror conversation. Every time you see your reflection, instead of cataloging flaws or rehearsing criticisms, you speak truth to the person looking back at you. You remind them of whose they are. You declare over them what God declares over them. I know this might feel awkward at first. We're so accustomed to being our own worst critics that speaking kindly to ourselves feels foreign, maybe even selfish. But consider this. If you wouldn't speak to your best friend the way you speak to yourself in your head, why is it acceptable to treat yourself that way? The mirror conversation isn't about denying reality or pretending you're perfect. It's about choosing to see yourself through the lens of unfailing love instead of through the lens of your harshest judge. It's about agreeing with God's assessment of your worth instead of accepting the world's evaluation of your value. You might say something like, "You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are chosen, beloved, set apart for good works. Your mistakes don't define you. Your past doesn't disqualify you. Your future is secure in the hands of one who never fails." The power of this practice isn't in the words themselves, though words carry tremendous power. The power is in the repetition of truth until it becomes louder than the lies you've been believing about yourself. It's in the consistent choice to align your self-talk with God's heart talk. Here's what starts happening after weeks of mirror conversations. You begin interrupting negative thought patterns before they spiral out of control. You catch yourself in moments of self-condemnation and redirect towards self-compassion. You develop an internal voice that sounds more like a loving parent and less like a critical prosecutor. The third practice is the gratitude inventory. Before you fall asleep each night, you intentionally identify 3 specific ways unfailing love showed up in your day. Not three good things that happened, but three evidences that you were loved, protected, provided for, or guided by someone who cares about the details of your existence. Maybe it was the way a conversation went better than expected. Maybe it was a moment of peace in the middle of chaos. Maybe it was the strength to handle something you didn't think you could face. Maybe it was simply the fact that you made it through another day with your hope intact. The gratitude inventory trains your heart to recognize God's fingerprints on your daily experience. Most of us miss 90% of the ways love is actively working in our lives because we're focused on the 10% that feels difficult or disappointing. But when you develop eyes to see love's activity, you realize it's everywhere. In the friend who texted at exactly the right moment, in the parking spot that opened up when you were running late, in the sunset that took your breath away when you needed beauty most, in the strength that showed up when you had nothing left to give. This isn't about manufacturing fake gratitude for genuinely difficult circumstances. It's about learning to see the love that's present, even in the midst of real pain. It's about recognizing that unfailing love doesn't eliminate suffering, but it never leaves you to suffer alone. The fourth practice might be the most challenging, but it's also the most transformative. It's called the love interruption. Whenever you encounter someone who irritates you, disappoints you, or triggers your judgment, you pause and ask yourself one question. How is God's love trying to reach this person through me right now? Not how can you change them, not how can you fix them, not how can you get them to behave differently, but how can you become a conduit for the same love that reached you when you were difficult, disappointing, and triggering to others. This practice will revolutionize your relationships because it shifts you from a position of judgment to a position of ministry. Instead of being frustrated by people's imperfections, you start seeing their imperfections as opportunities to demonstrate the kind of grace you've received. The love interruption doesn't mean you become a doormat or accept abuse. It means you choose to respond from love instead of reacting from hurt. It means you look for ways to build people up instead of constantly tearing them down in your mind. Sometimes the love interruption looks like choosing patience when someone is being unreasonable. Sometimes it looks like offering encouragement when someone is struggling. Sometimes it looks like simply refusing to gossip about someone who has gossiped about you. But here's what's amazing about this practice. Every time you choose love instead of judgment, every time you offer grace instead of criticism, every time you respond with kindness instead of reacting with harshness, you're not just blessing the other person. You're strengthening your own capacity to receive love. It's like your heart is a muscle that grows stronger every time you exercise it in the direction of love. The more you practice loving difficult people, the more convinced you become that God loves you despite your own difficulty. The fifth practice is what I call the purpose pause. Throughout your day, whenever you're engaged in any activity, you pause and ask, how can I do this as an expression of love? Whether you're working, parenting, studying, cleaning, creating, or resting, you look for ways to infuse that activity with divine purpose. This transforms the mundane into the sacred. Washing dishes becomes an act of service to your family. Completing a project becomes an offering of excellence to your Creator. Having a conversation becomes an opportunity to make someone feel valued and heard. The purpose pause reminds you that there's no such thing as secular and sacred when you're living from unfailing love. Every moment becomes an opportunity to participate in something eternal. Every interaction becomes a chance to make love visible in a world that desperately needs to see it. But here's what I want you to understand about all these practices. They're not laws you have to follow perfectly to earn God's approval. They're not requirements you must fulfill to maintain His love. They're simply tools that help you stay connected to a love that's already yours, a relationship that's already secure, a worth that's already been established. Some days you'll do all 5 practices beautifully. Other days you'll forget completely and only remember at the end of the day that you meant to be more intentional. The inconsistency doesn't diminish the love. The imperfection doesn't disqualify you from grace. What matters is that you keep returning. What counts is that you don't give up on the process just because you're not perfect at the process. What's significant is that you continue choosing love, even when choosing love feels difficult. Because here's the truth about transformation. It doesn't happen because you perform spiritual practices flawlessly. It happens because you consistently return to the source of love that transforms you from the inside out. It's not about your faithfulness to the practices. It's about the faithfulness of the love that meets you in the practices. And as these rhythms become more natural, as these habits become more automatic, you'll start noticing something extraordinary happening in your life. You'll find yourself naturally gravitating toward people and opportunities that align with your growing understanding of love. You'll discover that your capacity for joy is expanding even when your circumstances aren't perfect. You'll realize that you're becoming the kind of person others want to be around, not because you're trying to be impressive, but because you carry something they recognize their own souls are hungry for. You'll see that your presence brings peace to environments that were previously chaotic, hope to people who had given up, and healing to relationships that seemed beyond repair. This isn't because you've become a perfect person. It's because you've learned to be a conduit for perfect love. You've discovered how to let something infinitely greater than yourself flow through you to touch lives in ways you could never orchestrate on your own. But I need to prepare you for something that will inevitably happen as you grow in this love. You're going to face seasons where these practices feel dry, where God seems distant, where love feels more like a concept than a reality. You're going to encounter periods where you wonder if any of this is actually true, or if you've just convinced yourself to believe something comforting but ultimately false. These seasons aren't evidence that you're doing something wrong. They're not proof that unfailing love has failed. They're actually necessary parts of the growth process, opportunities for your faith to develop roots that go deeper than feelings, foundations that can withstand storms. During these dry seasons, the practices become even more important, not because they manufacture feelings of love, but because they keep you connected to truth when truth doesn't feel true. They remind you of what you know to be real when reality feels questionable. This is where many people give up on the journey into unfailing love. They mistake emotional dryness for spiritual abandonment. They interpret temporary distance as permanent rejection. They conclude that if they can't feel God's love, it must not be there. But this is exactly where faith becomes most powerful and most necessary. Faith isn't believing despite the evidence. Faith is choosing to act on what you know to be true, even when you can't sense its reality in the moment. During dry seasons, you continue the morning reset not because you feel God's presence, but because you know His presence is there, regardless of your feelings. You persist with the mirror conversations, not because you feel lovable, but because you are lovable whether you feel it or not. You maintain the gratitude inventory, not because everything feels wonderful, but because love is still working, even when its work is invisible to you. You practice the love interruption not because you feel loving toward difficult people, but because love itself is bigger than your feelings about people. And here's what happens when you persevere through these seasons. Your relationship with unfailing love becomes less dependent on emotional highs and more grounded in unshakable truth. Your spiritual maturity deepens in ways that wouldn't be possible if you only experienced constant feelings of divine closeness. You develop what the Bible calls the peace that passes understanding, a settledness in your soul that exists independent of your circumstances or emotions, a confidence in God's goodness that remains steady even when goodness is hard to see. But the most beautiful thing about walking through dry seasons while maintaining these practices is what happens on the other side. When the feelings return, when the sense of God's presence becomes strong again, when love feels tangible and real, you appreciate it in ways you never could have before the drought. It's like someone who has been thirsty, truly understanding the value of water. Someone who has been in darkness, genuinely appreciating light. Someone who has felt abandoned, completely treasuring the experience of belonging. The contrast creates a depth of gratitude, a richness of worship, an intensity of love that only comes through the full spectrum of human experience with divine love. You realize that God wasn't absent during the dry seasons. He was developing something in you that could only be developed through the experience of seeking Him when seeking felt pointless. Now, as we near the end of our journey together, I want you to understand something crucial about what happens next. Everything I've shared with you, every truth about unfailing love, every practice for staying connected to it, every insight about living from it instead of for it, all of this is just the beginning. You see, the goal was never just for you to feel better about yourself, though you will. The purpose wasn't just for you to have more peace in your daily life, though you'll experience that too. The ultimate aim isn't even for you to have a closer relationship with God, though that relationship will deepen beyond anything you can imagine. The real purpose of your encounter with unfailing love is for you to become so convinced of its reality, so transformed by its power, so overflowing with its abundance, that you can't help but make it available to others who are desperately searching for the same thing you found. Your healing becomes part of someone else's healing. Your freedom becomes a key to unlock someone else's prison. Your transformation becomes evidence to a watching world that change is possible, that love is real, that hope is reasonable. This doesn't mean you become a preacher or a counselor or a missionary, though you might. It means you become a living demonstration of what unfailing love looks like when it takes up residence in a human heart. You become proof that the love we've been talking about isn't just a beautiful idea, but a life-changing reality. And here's what's incredible about this. The moment you begin living as evidence of unfailing love, the moment you start unconsciously demonstrating its power through the way you treat yourself and others, something happens that you could never orchestrate on your own. People start noticing that something is different about you. They can't quite put their finger on what it is, but they're drawn to the peace you carry, the joy that seems independent of your circumstances, the way you love people who don't seem to deserve it. They start asking questions. They want to know what changed. They're curious about the source of your confidence, your hope, your ability to forgive and keep believing in people even when those people have disappointed you repeatedly. And when they ask, you get to tell them about the love that found you when you were lost, that chose you when you felt rejected, that never gave up on you even when you had given up on yourself. You get to share how this love didn't just make you feel better, but actually made you better. Your story becomes an invitation for others to discover their own story with unfailing love. Your testimony becomes a bridge that helps someone else cross from despair to hope, from emptiness to fullness, from feeling worthless to knowing they're priceless. But here's what makes this so beautiful. You don't have to have a dramatic testimony to make a difference. You don't need to have overcome terrible addictions or traumatic experiences to have something worth sharing. Sometimes the most powerful testimonies come from ordinary people who discovered extraordinary love in the midst of everyday life. Your willingness to believe that you matter, your choice to treat yourself with kindness, your decision to love others despite their imperfections, your commitment to hope, even when hope feels foolish, all of these become revolutionary acts in a world that has forgotten how to receive and give authentic love. Every time you choose love over fear, grace over judgment, hope over despair, you're participating in the transformation of the world. You're contributing to a movement that's bigger than any political system, more powerful than any social revolution, more lasting than any human achievement. You're part of the ancient and eternal mission of making visible the invisible love that holds the universe together. You're joining the ranks of people throughout history who have discovered that they were loved infinitely and have spent their lives helping others make the same discovery. This is your invitation. Not just to be loved, though you are loved beyond measure. Not just to be healed, though healing is yours for the receiving. Not just to be transformed, though transformation is inevitable when you truly encounter unfailing love. This is your invitation to become part of the solution to the loneliness, brokenness, and hopelessness that plague our world. This is your call to let the love that rescued you become the love that rescues others through you. The journey into unfailing love never ends. It only gets deeper, richer, more amazing as you discover new dimensions of how vast and personal and powerful this love really is. But the journey from unfailing love into the lives of others who need it, that adventure is just beginning, and it starts with a choice. The choice to believe that what you've discovered is real enough to stake your life on. The choice to live as if you're truly loved, even when feelings suggest otherwise. The choice to love others the way you've been loved, even when they don't love you back. The choice to become evidence that unfailing love isn't just a beautiful concept, but the most practical, powerful, life-changing reality in existence. The world is waiting for you to make that choice. But before you do, I need to tell you about the greatest enemy of unfailing love, the one force that has convinced more people to reject what they desperately need than any other lie ever told. It's not doubt. Doubt is actually healthy because it leads to deeper questions, and deeper questions lead to more solid answers. It's not fear. Fear can be overcome with enough evidence of safety. It's not even past hurt. Wounds can heal when they're properly tended. The greatest enemy of unfailing love is the belief that you have to understand it completely before you can receive it fully. The lie that says you need to have all your theological questions answered, all your intellectual objections resolved, all your emotional barriers removed before this love can truly be yours. This is the perfectionist trap that keeps brilliant people stuck in analysis paralysis while simple people walk into the freedom they're overthinking. This is the academic prison that convinces educated minds they're too sophisticated to need something as basic as unconditional love. But here's what I've discovered after walking with thousands of people through this journey. The ones who experience the deepest transformation aren't necessarily the ones who understand the most theology. They're the ones who are willing to receive love before they fully comprehend it. Think about a child with their parent. The child doesn't understand the complexities of adult love, the sacrifices being made, the long-term planning happening for their benefit. They simply know they're safe, they're cared for, they belong. And that simple knowing is enough to help them flourish. You don't have to solve the mystery of how God can be both perfectly just and perfectly merciful before you accept His mercy. You don't have to understand how divine sovereignty and human free will work together before you exercise your freedom to choose love. You don't have to figure out why bad things happen to good people before you receive the good thing that's happening to you right now. Understanding will come, questions will be answered, mysteries will be revealed, but not all at once, and not necessarily in the order you'd prefer. What you can have right now, what's available to you in this very moment, is the experience of being completely known and completely loved by the one who knows everything there is to know. Here's what happens when you stop demanding to understand before you're willing to receive. You discover that experience actually leads to understanding, not the other way around. The more you live in this love, the more sense it makes. The more you practice these truths, the more convinced you become of their reality. It's like learning to swim. You can read every book about swimming, study every technique, understand all the physics of buoyancy and propulsion, but until you get in the water and trust it to hold you up, you'll never actually know what swimming feels like. Unfailing love is an experience before it's an explanation. It's a relationship before it's a theology. It's a reality you live in before it's a concept you master. And here's something beautiful about the way this love reveals itself. It meets you exactly where your understanding ends and your need begins. It doesn't wait for you to become smart enough to deserve it. It shows up in your confusion, in your questions, in your moments of complete bewilderment about how life works. Some of the most profound encounters with divine love happen when people stop trying to be worthy of it and simply become desperate enough to receive it. When the intellectual barriers come down because the emotional need becomes too great to ignore. This is why broken people often understand grace better than religious people. Why children grasp love more quickly than scholars. Why those who have nothing left to prove are more open to being proven wrong about their own worthlessness. But I don't want you to think that intelligence is an obstacle to love. Some of the most brilliant minds in history have been captured by this same unfailing love we've been exploring. The difference is that they learned to hold their questions with open hands instead of clenched fists. They discovered that faith and reason aren't enemies, but dance partners. That loving God with your mind means using your intellect to explore the depths of love, not to build walls against it. That the more you truly understand about reality, the more amazing this love becomes. So if you're someone who needs to think through everything before you embrace it, I'm not asking you to check your brain at the door. I'm inviting you to use your mind to consider the evidence we've been examining together, to honestly evaluate whether the transformation I've described matches what you've observed in people who claim to have encountered this love. Look at the lives that have been changed. Study the historical impact of people who believed they were unconditionally loved by their Creator. Examine the psychological research on what happens when people experience genuine acceptance and belonging. But while you're thinking, also be feeling. While you're analyzing, also be experiencing. While you're questioning, also be opening your heart to the possibility that what you're questioning might actually be the answer you've been searching for all along. Because here's what I know about you already, just from the fact that you've stayed with me through this entire journey. Something in your spirit recognizes truth when it hears it. Something in your soul resonates with the love I've been describing. Something in your heart wants to believe that you could be loved this completely, that something is the love itself calling to you from the inside out. It's the part of you that was created by love, for love, to receive love and give love. It's the deepest, truest part of who you are, the part that exists underneath all the layers of protection and performance and pretending. And that part of you doesn't need more evidence. It doesn't require additional proof. It doesn't demand further explanation. It simply wants to come home to the love it was made for. Right now, as I'm speaking these words, that love is closer to you than your own breath. It's not waiting for you to clean up your life, figure out your theology, or resolve your emotional issues. It's present, available, ready to be received by anyone willing to stop earning and start accepting. The question isn't whether you deserve this love. You don't, and neither does anyone else. That's what makes it grace. The question isn't whether you understand this love. You can't, not fully, not yet. That's what makes it mystery. The question isn't whether you feel this love. Feelings come and go. That's what makes it faith. The only question that matters is this. Are you willing to receive what's being offered? Are you ready to stop trying to qualify for something that's already been freely given? Are you prepared to let go of control and let yourself be loved in ways you've never been loved before? If your answer is yes, even a tentative yes, even a hopeful maybe, then everything changes starting right now. Not because you've done something to earn change, but because you've positioned yourself to receive the change that love brings wherever it's welcomed. The transformation doesn't happen because you finally got good enough for God to accept you. It happens because you finally got desperate enough, or humble enough, or tired enough, or hopeful enough to accept that you're already accepted. And in that moment of acceptance, everything we've talked about becomes more than information. It becomes your reality. The morning reset becomes natural because you wake up grateful to be alive in a universe where you're loved. The mirror conversations become easy because you're agreeing with what love has already declared about you. The gratitude inventory becomes automatic because you start seeing evidence of care everywhere you look. The love interruption becomes instinctive because you recognize that difficult people are just people who haven't discovered their own belovedness yet. The purpose pause becomes constant because every moment becomes an opportunity to participate in something eternal. But here's what I want you to know as we conclude this journey together. Even if you're not ready to make that choice today, even if you need more time to think, more space to process, more evidence to consider, this love isn't going anywhere. It won't get impatient with your questions. It won't be offended by your doubts. It won't give up on you if you need to walk away and come back later. It's called unfailing love for a reason. It fails at nothing, including the failure to wait for you to be ready to receive it. So take your time, ask your questions, work through your concerns, but while you're doing that, pay attention to what's happening in your heart. Notice the stirring that happens when you consider the possibility that you're infinitely valuable. Watch for the hope that rises when you imagine being loved without conditions. That stirring, that hope, that's not wishful thinking, that's recognition. That's your soul remembering what it was created for. That's love calling to love, inviting you to come home to yourself, to your purpose, to the one who knew your name before you were born and will speak it with delight for all eternity. The invitation stands. The door remains open. The love that found you in this moment will continue pursuing you until you're ready to stop running and start receiving. And when that day comes, when you finally say yes to being loved the way you were always meant to be loved, you'll discover that this wasn't just about finding love. This was about finding yourself. This wasn't just about being accepted. This was about accepting the incredible truth that you were created for something magnificent. This wasn't just about feeling better. This was about becoming the person you were always supposed to be before the world convinced you to be someone else. The unfailing love that has been reaching for you through every word of our time together isn't just offering you comfort, though comfort will come. It's not just promising you peace, though peace will follow. It's not just guaranteeing you purpose, though purpose will emerge. It's offering you yourself. The real you, the you that exists in the heart of God, the you that was worth creating, worth pursuing, worth dying for, the you that has something unique to contribute to the healing of this broken world. That you is who this love sees when it looks at you. That you is who this love is calling forth. That you is who you become when you finally believe that being loved completely is not only possible, but your birthright as a child of the one who is love itself. Stop here, child of God. You've heard the invitation. You've felt the pull. You know what's being offered. Now choose. Choose to believe you're worth loving. Choose to receive what's freely given. Choose to become who you were always meant to be. Choose love. Choose life. Choose the unfailing love that will never let you go. The rest of your story is waiting to be written, and it begins with that choice. Your entire existence has been leading to this moment of decision. Everything you've experienced, every pain that drove you to search for something more, every disappointment that made you question whether love is real, every moment of loneliness that created a hunger in your soul for authentic connection, it has all been preparing you for this encounter with truth. But I need you to understand something that might challenge everything you think you know about making life-changing decisions. The choice to receive unfailing love isn't like choosing a new job or deciding where to live or picking what to eat for dinner. Those choices depend on your wisdom, your analysis, your ability to weigh pros and cons and make intelligent decisions. This choice is different because it's not really about your intelligence at all. It's about your willingness to let something greater than your understanding take over the direction of your life. It's about admitting that the love reaching for you knows things about your future that you cannot possibly know about your future. Think about it this way. When a child is drowning, they don't analyze the qualifications of the person throwing them a life preserver. They don't research the success rate of water rescues. They don't debate the philosophical implications of accepting help. They simply grab hold of what can save them and let themselves be pulled to safety. That's exactly what's happening right now. You've been drowning in a world that convinced you that love has to be earned, that worth has to be proven, that acceptance has to be purchased with perfect performance. And now someone is throwing you a life preserver called grace. The question isn't whether you understand how grace works. The question is whether you're tired enough of drowning to grab hold of what can save you. And here's what happens the moment you make that choice. The moment you stop trying to figure out whether you deserve rescue and simply accept that rescue is being offered, everything about your relationship with yourself begins to shift. The voices in your head that have been criticizing you for years suddenly have competition from a voice that speaks nothing but love over your life. But I want to prepare you for something that might surprise you about this transformation. It doesn't feel like what you expect it to feel like. Most people imagine that accepting God's love will create some kind of emotional high, some overwhelming feeling of warmth and acceptance that proves the experience is real. Sometimes that happens, but more often the change is quieter, deeper, more subtle. It's like the difference between turning on a bright light and watching the sun rise. The bright light is dramatic and immediate. The sunrise is gradual and gentle, but it transforms everything it touches. When you truly receive unfailing love, you might not feel dramatically different at first, but you'll start noticing that you're less anxious about things that used to terrify you. You'll find yourself being kinder to people who used to irritate you. You'll discover that you're more patient with your own mistakes and more hopeful about your own potential. These changes happen not because you're trying to be a better person, but because you're finally connected to the source of everything good. It's like a flower that's been kept in darkness, suddenly being placed in sunlight. The flower doesn't have to force itself to bloom. The very nature of the flower responds to the light it was created for. But here's where it gets challenging, and I need to be completely honest with you about this. Choosing to live in unfailing love means you're going to have to let go of some things that have been giving you a sense of control over your life. You're going to have to release the belief that you can protect yourself from disappointment by never expecting too much. You're going to have to abandon the strategy of earning love through performance because you'll be receiving love as a gift instead. You're going to have to give up the illusion that you can guarantee your own security through your own efforts. This can feel terrifying at first, because even though the old ways of living weren't working, at least they were familiar. Even though trying to earn love was exhausting, at least it felt like you were doing something. Even though protecting yourself from disappointment meant missing out on deep connection, at least it felt safe. But here's what you discover when you finally let go of those false securities. The thing you were actually searching for all along wasn't security, it was certainty. And there's a massive difference between the two. Security is about controlling your circumstances to minimize risk. Certainty is about knowing that no matter what circumstances you face, you're going to be okay, because you're held by something stronger than circumstances. Security depends on your ability to predict and manage the future. Certainty rests on the character of the one who already knows your future and has promised to work everything together for your good. Security requires you to be strong enough to handle whatever comes. Certainty allows you to be weak because your strength comes from a source that never runs dry. When you choose to live in unfailing love, you're choosing certainty over security. You're choosing to trust in the character of God rather than in your own ability to control outcomes. You're choosing to find your stability in His unchanging nature rather than in your changing circumstances. And here's what's beautiful about this choice. The moment you stop trying to create your own security and start resting in divine certainty, you actually become more secure than you ever were when you were trying to manufacture security on your own. It's like the difference between a tree that grows on rocky ground and one that grows near a river. The tree on rocky ground has to work constantly to find enough water to survive. Its roots spread wide but shallow, always searching for the next source of nourishment. It's vulnerable to drought, to storms, to any change in conditions. But the tree planted by the river sinks its roots deep into the source of life itself. It doesn't worry about drought because its water supply is constant. It doesn't fear storms because its foundation goes down to bedrock. It flourishes in every season because it's connected to something that never changes. That's what happens when you root your identity in unfailing love instead of in your own performance or other people's approval or your ability to control your circumstances. You become the kind of person who thrives regardless of what's happening around you because your source of life comes from within, from your connection to the love that never fails. But I need to address something that might be creating resistance in your heart right now. Maybe you're thinking, this sounds wonderful, but I've tried faith before and it didn't work. I've prayed prayers and nothing changed. I've been to church and felt more alone than ever. How do I know this time will be different? And that's actually a profound question because it reveals something important about the difference between religion and relationship, between trying to connect with God and actually being connected to God. Most people's first encounter with faith is through religious systems that, however well-intentioned, often focus more on what you need to do for God than on what God has already done for you. They emphasize your performance rather than His finished work. They highlight your responsibility rather than His reliability. So you tried to pray more, read more, serve more, believe more, hoping that if you did enough spiritual activities, you would eventually feel the love and acceptance you were searching for. But that approach is backwards. It's like trying to turn on a lamp by polishing the bulb instead of plugging it into the power source. The unfailing love I've been describing to you isn't something you access through religious performance. It's something you receive through spiritual surrender. It's not about doing more for God. It's about allowing God to do more in you. The difference is profound. When you're trying to earn God's love through religious activity, every prayer becomes a performance. Every act of service becomes a transaction. Every moment of doubt becomes evidence that you're not faithful enough to deserve what you're seeking. But when you understand that God's love is already yours, prayer becomes conversation with someone who delights in your company. Service becomes the overflow of gratitude for what you've already received. Doubt becomes an opportunity to experience faith that doesn't depend on your feelings. So if you've tried faith before and felt disappointed, I want you to consider the possibility that what you tried wasn't actually faith at all. It was religious effort. And religious effort will always disappoint you because it's based on your ability to perform rather than on God's commitment to love you. True faith is much simpler and much more difficult than religious effort. It's simpler because it requires nothing from you except willingness to receive what's being offered. It's more difficult because it requires you to give up the illusion that you can earn what you need through your own efforts. But here's what happens when you make the shift from religious effort to spiritual surrender. Instead of feeling pressure to prove your worth to God, you feel freedom to discover your worth in God. Instead of constantly wondering if you're doing enough to maintain His love, you rest in the knowledge that His love maintains you. Instead of approaching God like an employee trying to impress their boss, You relate to him like a child who knows they're cherished, regardless of their performance. And that changes everything about how faith feels, how it works, and what it produces in your life. Now let me tell you something that might completely reframe how you think about this decision you're considering. The choice to receive unfailing love isn't just a personal decision that affects your individual life. It's a cosmic decision that affects the entire universe. I know that sounds dramatic, but stay with me. When you choose to believe that you're loved unconditionally, you're not just changing your opinion about yourself. You're aligning yourself with the fundamental force that holds all of reality together. You're agreeing with the truth that love is more powerful than hate, that light is stronger than darkness, that hope is more reliable than despair. Every time someone chooses to live from love instead of fear, it creates ripples that extend far beyond their personal experience. It adds to the collective weight of love in a world that often feels dominated by fear. It contributes to the healing of the cosmic brokenness that affects every human being. Your individual transformation becomes part of the universal transformation that God is working in all things. Your personal healing contributes to the healing of your family, your community, your generation. Your decision to believe you're loved makes it easier for others to believe they're loved too. This is why the enemy of your soul fights so hard against you receiving this love. It's not just about your happiness, though your happiness matters deeply to God. It's about the advancement of the kingdom of love in a world that has been held captive by the kingdom of fear. When you choose love, you're choosing sides in the ultimate battle between good and evil. You're declaring that you will no longer allow lies about your worth to go unchallenged in your own heart. You're refusing to participate in the self-hatred that keeps people trapped in cycles of destruction. You're becoming part of the solution instead of remaining part of the problem. You're joining the ranks of people throughout history who have discovered that they were created for something magnificent and have refused to settle for anything less. But here's what makes this choice even more significant. You're not just choosing for yourself. You're choosing for everyone whose life you will touch from this moment forward. Every person you will interact with, every relationship you will form, every opportunity you will have to influence someone else's understanding of their own worth. All of it will be affected by the decision you make right now. If you choose to believe you're loved, you'll naturally treat others as if they're lovable too. If you choose to see yourself as valuable, you'll instinctively recognize value in people others have written off. If you choose to live with hope, you'll become a source of hope for people who have given up on life. Your transformation will create a ripple effect of transformation in the lives of people you haven't even met yet. Your healing will contribute to the healing of wounds you don't even know exist. Your freedom will help set others free from prisons they don't even realize they're trapped in. This is the magnitude of what you're being invited into. Not just personal peace, though that will come. Not just individual purpose, though that will emerge. Not just private relationship with God, though that will deepen beyond anything you can imagine. You're being invited to participate in the redemption of everything that has been broken by the absence of love. You're being called to become part of the answer to every prayer that has ever been prayed by someone who felt unloved, unwanted, unworthy. The love that is reaching for you right now is the same love that reached into the darkness at the beginning of time and spoke light into existence. It's the same love that formed you in your mother's womb and knew your name before anyone else did. It's the same love that will still be calling your name when the stars burn out and time itself comes to an end. And this love is asking you one simple question. Will you let me love you the way I've always wanted to love you? Not, will you clean up your life first? Not, will you figure out all your theological questions? Not, will you become worthy of such an offer? Just, will you let yourself be loved? The answer to that question determines everything. It determines how you see yourself when you wake up tomorrow morning. It determines how you treat the difficult people in your life. It determines what you believe is possible for your future. It determines whether you live from fear or from faith, from scarcity or from abundance, from desperation or from security. But most importantly, it determines whether you'll spend the rest of your life searching for love or living from love, whether you'll keep trying to earn what's already been given or start enjoying what's already yours, whether you'll remain a seeker or become a finder. The unfailing love that has been pursuing you through every word of our journey together isn't going to force this decision on you. It won't manipulate you or pressure you or threaten you into choosing it. It will simply continue to be available, continue to be patient, continue to be faithful to its own nature, regardless of what you decide. But it's hoping you'll say yes. Not because it needs your acceptance to be complete, but because you need its acceptance to become who you were created to be. Not because it lacks anything without you, but because you lack everything without it. Right now, in this moment, as you're reading these words, that love is as close as your next breath. It's waiting for the slightest indication that you're ready to stop running and start receiving. It's prepared to flood your life with everything you've been searching for in all the wrong places. All it requires is your willingness to believe that such a love could actually exist and that it could actually be meant for someone like you. So what will it be, child of God? Will you keep trying to earn what's already been freely given? Will you continue searching for what's already found you? Will you persist in believing the lies about your worth when the truth is standing right in front of you? Or will you finally let yourself be loved? The choice is yours. The love is waiting, and your whole life is about to change based on what you decide in this moment. Choose love. Choose life. Choose the unfailing love that will never, ever let you go. Your story of transformation begins the moment you say yes. The moment you say yes to unfailing love, something shifts in the spiritual realm that you may not feel immediately, but that changes everything about your trajectory. It's like a switch being flipped in the control room of your soul. The same circumstances that used to drain you begin to energize you. The same people who used to trigger you start to evoke compassion instead. The same challenges that used to overwhelm you become opportunities to watch divine strength work through human weakness. But here's what I need you to understand about this yes. It's not a one-time decision that you make and then coast on for the rest of your life. It's a daily choice, sometimes an hourly choice, sometimes a moment-by-moment choice to keep returning to this truth when everything around you suggests it isn't real. There will be mornings when you wake up and the old feelings of worthlessness come flooding back. There will be conversations where someone's rejection makes you question whether you're actually lovable. There will be seasons where God feels distant and love feels like something you made up to comfort yourself. In those moments, your yes becomes not just a one-time declaration, but a continuous decision to align yourself with truth, regardless of how truth feels in the moment. It becomes an act of rebellion against every lie that tries to convince you that you're alone, unwanted, or destined for disappointment. This is where most people stumble in their journey with unfailing love. They think that saying yes once should eliminate all doubt, all struggle, all questions about their worth. They expect that receiving divine love should feel like a permanent emotional high that never wavers. But that's not how transformation works. Real change happens not through the absence of struggle, but through the presence of love in the midst of struggle. It's not that you stop facing difficulties. It's that you face difficulties with a completely different understanding of who you are and whose you are. Think about it like learning to walk. A child doesn't take one step and then never fall again. They take a step, fall down, get back up, take another step, stumble, get back up again. Each time they fall, they're not failing at walking, they're learning to walk. Each time they get back up, they're building the strength and balance they need to eventually walk without falling. Your journey with unfailing love follows the same pattern. Each time you doubt, You're not failing at faith. You're learning to have faith. Each time you return to truth after being overwhelmed by lies, you're building spiritual muscle that makes you stronger for the next challenge. And here's what's beautiful about this process. God isn't standing over you with a stopwatch, timing how long it takes you to get back up when you fall. He's not disappointed when you struggle with the same insecurities repeatedly. He's not surprised when you need to be reminded of the same truths over and over again. He's like a patient father teaching his child to ride a bicycle. He runs alongside you, holding you steady until you find your balance. When you wobble, he doesn't let go in frustration. When you fall, he doesn't lecture you about your technique. He simply helps you back onto the bike and encourages you to try again. Because he knows something about your future that you don't know about your future. He knows that all this practice, all this falling and getting back up, all this returning to truth when lies feel more convincing, is developing something in you that couldn't be developed any other way. You're learning to love yourself the way he loves you. You're discovering how to extend grace to others the way he extends grace to you. You're developing the kind of unshakable confidence that comes not from never being shaken, but from being shaken repeatedly and discovering that there's something in you that cannot be destroyed. But I want to address something that might be creating anxiety as you consider this path. Maybe you're thinking about all the people in your life who won't understand this transformation. Maybe you're worried about family members who will think you've become too religious. Maybe you're concerned about friends who will accuse you of thinking you're better than them now. And these concerns are valid because transformation is always threatening to people who haven't experienced it themselves. When you start living from love instead of fear, it highlights the fear-based patterns in others. When you begin treating yourself with kindness, it makes others uncomfortable with their own self-criticism. When you demonstrate peace in chaotic situations, it reveals how much chaos others have accepted as normal. Your healing becomes an invitation for others to heal, but not everyone is ready to accept that invitation. Some people are so comfortable with their dysfunction that your function makes them nervous. Some people are so attached to their victim identity that your victory feels like a personal attack on their story. Here's what you need to know about this reality. You cannot love people into transformation, but you can love them through their resistance to transformation. You cannot force anyone to see their own worth, but you can refuse to participate in their self-hatred. You cannot make people choose healing, but you can demonstrate what healing looks like lived out in daily life. This means you'll have to develop what I call loving boundaries. You'll learn to care about people without carrying their emotional baggage. You'll discover how to be present to their pain without absorbing their pain as your own. You'll practice offering support without enabling destructive patterns. These boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're fences that define where your responsibility ends and theirs begins. They protect the love you've received so that it doesn't get depleted by people who want to take from you without giving anything back. But here's what's amazing about living this way. When you stop trying to fix everyone around you and focus on staying connected to the love that fixes you, something remarkable happens. People start being drawn to the peace you carry instead of the advice you offer. They become curious about the source of your stability rather than dependent on your ability to solve their problems. You become like a lighthouse in a storm. You don't chase after ships to rescue them. You simply stand firm on your foundation and let your light shine consistently, providing a reference point for anyone who wants to find their way to safety. And some will find their way to that safety. Some will be so inspired by the transformation they see in you that they'll want to discover the same love for themselves. Some will ask you questions that give you opportunities to share what you've learned about being loved unconditionally. But others will choose to remain in the storm. Others will prefer the chaos they know to the peace they don't understand. Others will be so committed to their story of rejection that they'll reject even genuine offers of acceptance. Learning to love these people without being destroyed by their choices is one of the most challenging aspects of living from unfailing love. It requires you to develop the same kind of heart that God has toward humanity. A heart that loves completely while allowing people the freedom to reject that love. This is where you discover that love and wisdom aren't opposites, but partners. Love motivates you to care about everyone. Wisdom helps you understand that caring doesn't mean controlling. Love makes you want the best for people. Wisdom shows you that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their worst. But here's what sustains you through the heartbreak of loving people who don't love themselves yet. You remember your own journey. You remember how long it took you to believe you were worth loving. You remember how many people tried to tell you the truth about your value before you were ready to hear it. And you realize that your job isn't to convince anyone of anything. Your job is simply to be a living demonstration of what happens when someone finally believes they're loved. Your life becomes a testimony that transformation is possible, that healing is available, that hope is reasonable. Some people will see that testimony and want what you have. Others will see it and feel threatened by it. Still others will see it and not understand what they're seeing at all. But all of them will be affected by encountering someone who has learned to live from love instead of for love. Now let me tell you something that will help you navigate the inevitable challenges that come with this new way of living. The same love that transformed you is actively working to transform everyone you encounter, even the people who seem completely resistant to change. This means that every difficult person in your life is actually someone that God is pursuing just as relentlessly as He pursued you. Every broken relationship is a relationship that divine love wants to heal. Every hostile interaction is an opportunity for that love to demonstrate its power through your response. When you understand this, it changes how you see the challenging people in your life. Instead of viewing them as obstacles to your peace, you start seeing them as assignments for your love. Instead of being frustrated by their dysfunction, you become curious about what wounds are driving their behavior. This doesn't mean you become naive about people's capacity to cause harm. It doesn't mean you ignore red flags or excuse abusive behavior. It means you learn to see people the way God sees them, as beloved children who have forgotten their identity and are acting out of that forgetting. And when you see people this way, something remarkable happens to your own heart. The resentment you've been carrying toward those who have hurt you begins to dissolve. The bitterness that has been poisoning your own soul starts to lose its grip. The anger that has been consuming your emotional energy transforms into compassion. This isn't something you force or fake. It's the natural result of being so filled with love that there's no room left for hate. It's what happens when you're so secure in your own worth that other people's inability to see it doesn't threaten you anymore. But I need to warn you about something that often happens when people reach this level of transformation. You might start to feel guilty about how good your life is becoming. You might wonder if it's selfish to be happy when so many people around you are still struggling. You might even sabotage your own progress because some part of you believes that suffering is more noble than joy, that struggle is more authentic than peace, that brokenness is more relatable than wholeness. This is one of the enemy's most subtle attacks on people who are growing in love. He can't convince you that you're worthless anymore because you've experienced too much evidence to the contrary. So instead, he tries to convince you that being worthwhile makes you responsible for everyone else's pain. But here's the truth that will set you free from this trap. Your joy doesn't diminish anyone else's potential for joy. Your peace doesn't steal peace from others. Your healing doesn't prevent others from being healed. In fact, the opposite is true. The more whole you become, the more you have to offer others who are seeking wholeness. The more loved you feel, the more love you have available to give away. The more secure you are in your own identity, the more you can help others discover theirs. Your transformation isn't selfish, it's generous. Your healing isn't unfair to those who haven't healed yet. It's hope for those who haven't healed yet. Your freedom isn't something to feel guilty about. It's something to celebrate as evidence that freedom is possible for everyone. This is why it's so important that you receive this love fully, without reservation, without apology, without the qualifier that you don't deserve it. Because the degree to which you receive it is the degree to which you'll be able to give it away. If you only half believe you're loved, you'll only be able to offer half-hearted love to others. If you're constantly questioning your own worth, you won't have the confidence to affirm worth in people who can't see it themselves. If you're still trying to earn God's acceptance, you'll inadvertently communicate to others that they need to earn it too. But when you're fully convinced of your own belovedness, when you're completely secure in your identity as a child of the Most High God, when you're absolutely certain that nothing can separate you from divine love, then you become a safe place for others to discover the same truth about themselves. You become someone who can love people without needing them to love you back. Someone who can believe in people's potential even when they've given up on themselves. Someone who can offer grace without keeping score, hope without guarantees, acceptance without conditions. And here's what happens when you become that kind of person. You start attracting people who are hungry for authentic love. Not people who want to use you or manipulate you or drain you of energy, but people who recognize that you have something their souls are craving and they want to learn how to find it for themselves. Your relationships begin to transform from transactions based on mutual need to connections based on mutual love. Your friendships deepen because they're rooted in truth instead of performance. Your family dynamics improve because you're no longer trying to get from them what only God can give you. Even your professional relationships change because you bring a different energy to every interaction. You're not desperately seeking approval or validation from colleagues. You're not threatened by other people's success because you're secure in your own value. You're not competing for limited resources because you know you're connected to unlimited supply. People notice this difference even when they can't articulate what they're noticing. They find themselves wanting to be around you because you make them feel more peaceful, more hopeful, more valuable. They start asking you questions about what's changed in your life, what's different about your perspective, what's the source of your confidence. And when they ask, you get to tell them about the love that found you when you were lost, that chose you when you felt rejected, that never gave up on you even when you had given up on yourself. You get to share how this love didn't just make you feel better about your circumstances, but actually gave you the power to change your circumstances. Your story becomes a bridge that helps others cross from despair to hope, from emptiness to fullness, from feeling worthless to knowing they're priceless. Your testimony becomes evidence that the love you're describing isn't just a beautiful concept, but a life-changing reality. But here's what makes your story so powerful. It's not perfect. It's not polished. It's not free from struggle or doubt or moments of weakness. It's real. It's honest. It's the story of an ordinary person who discovered they were loved by an extraordinary God and allowed that discovery to transform everything about how they live. People connect with imperfect stories more than perfect ones, because imperfect stories give them hope that transformation is possible for someone like them. When you share your struggles alongside your victories, when you admit your ongoing need for grace while celebrating how grace has changed you, you create space for others to believe that they too could experience this kind of love. And this is where your purpose becomes crystal clear. You weren't just rescued from something. You were rescued for something. You weren't just healed for your own benefit. You were healed so that your healing could contribute to the healing of others. You weren't just set free to enjoy your own freedom. You were set free to help others find their way to freedom too. This doesn't mean you become a preacher or a counselor or a missionary, though you might. It means you become a living demonstration of what unfailing love looks like when it takes up residence in a human heart. You become proof that the love we've been talking about isn't just a religious concept, but a transformational reality. And here's what's beautiful about this calling. It doesn't require you to be perfect. It doesn't demand that you have all the answers. It doesn't expect you to never struggle or doubt or make mistakes. It simply asks you to be authentic about your journey and generous with what you've discovered along the way. Every time you choose love over fear, you're fulfilling your purpose. Every time you extend grace instead of judgment, you're living out your calling. Every time you offer hope to someone who has given up, you're participating in the redemption of the world. These may seem like small acts, insignificant moments, ordinary choices, but in the economy of unfailing love, there are no small acts. Every choice to love creates ripples that extend far beyond what you can see. Every decision to hope adds to the collective weight of hope in a world that often feels hopeless. Your individual transformation becomes part of the universal transformation that God is working in all things. Your personal healing contributes to the healing of the cosmic brokenness that affects every human being. Your decision to live from love instead of fear makes it easier for others to make the same decision. This is the magnitude of what you've been invited into. Not just personal peace, though that will come. Not just individual purpose, though that will emerge. Not just private relationship with God, though that will deepen beyond anything you can imagine. You've been invited to participate in the greatest story ever told. The story of love conquering hate, light overcoming darkness, hope triumphing over despair, the story of ordinary people discovering they're loved extraordinarily and allowing that discovery to change not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone they touch. And your chapter in that story begins the moment you fully embrace the truth that you are loved, you are chosen, you are valuable, you are wanted, you are enough. Not because of what you've done or what you might do, but because of who you are and whose you are. The unfailing love that has been pursuing you through every word of our journey together isn't just offering you comfort for your pain, it's offering you participation in the healing of all pain. It's not just promising you peace for your anxiety, it's inviting you to become a source of peace for the anxiety of others. This love sees not just who you are, but who you could become when you're fully convinced of your own belovedness. It sees not just your individual potential, but your potential to impact generations through the love you learn to give and receive. Right now, as you're considering what it would mean to say yes to this love, that future version of yourself is cheering you on. The person you become when you're living from unfailing love instead of searching for it. The relationships you build when you're secure instead of needy. The legacy you leave when you're confident in your worth instead of constantly questioning it. That future is not just possible, it's inevitable once you make the choice to receive what's being offered. Because unfailing love doesn't just rescue people, it transforms them. It doesn't just heal wounds. It turns scars into sources of strength. It doesn't just restore what was broken. It creates something more beautiful than what existed before the breaking. The only question remaining is whether you're ready to step into that future, whether you're prepared to let go of the familiar pain of feeling unloved and embrace the unfamiliar joy of knowing you're cherished. Whether you're willing to trade the false security of trying to earn worth for the true security of receiving worth as a gift. Your entire life has been preparing you for this moment of decision. Every disappointment that made you hunger for something real. Every rejection that made you long for acceptance. Every moment of emptiness that created space for fullness. Every experience of conditional love that made you desperate for love without conditions. It has all been leading to this encounter with truth, to this invitation to transformation, to this opportunity to discover that the love you've been searching for in all the wrong places has been searching for you all along. The choice is still yours. The love is still waiting, and your whole future is balanced on what you decide right now. Will you finally let yourself be loved the way you were always meant to be loved? Say yes. Say it with your whole heart. Say it even if your mind has questions. Say it even if your emotions feel numb. Say it because something deeper than thought and feeling recognizes that this is what you've been created for. Say yes to being loved. Say yes to being transformed. Say yes to becoming who you were always meant to be. Your story of unfailing love begins the moment those words leave your lips, and it will be the most beautiful story ever written because it will be written by love himself in the pages of your transformed life.